Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Welcome to the Ear Mob Podcast. I am your host, Chaz Stumbo. Hey, good evening, everybody. It's your old pal, Chaz Stumbo here. I've got a friend on tonight, a former bandmate of mine. This guy, what can I say, man? He actually, believe it or not, and you're going to believe it because I'm going to tell you the story. He taught me quite a bit about playing and locking in with a bass player. And with somebody who's got such a deep pocket as this guy, it was a lot, man. It was fun. So I'm going to not introduce this guy. I'm going to let a good friend of mine introduce him for me.
Hey. Come man, take your time, have a drink, relax. You earned it. Tom Coolin on bass guitar, Mr. Anthony Esposito.
There you go, buddy. A little blast from the past for you.
Wow, Robert. Yeah, I love Mason. What's this pockets thing? You're making me sound cheap.
No, dude. No, dude. Deep pockets, deep pockets. And what I was referring to was when we were rehearsing to go on tour, there you kept bringing it up. Man, we got to lock in, dude. Mick and I used to lock in. We've got to lock in. What we do together is going to solidify everything. And that wasn't so much of a new concept for me, but I had never really dealt with it before. And so when we locked in like that with, certain fills and stops and stuff like that, man, it was great, dude. And I appreciate that because it did teach me how important that was.
Well, I mean, I work when I produce bands, I work with even from baby bands all the way up to national acts. They kind of they skate on top. And they don't really listen to the kick, snare, hi-hat, the pattern, the pump, the groove of it all. And that's where you get the sex of the groove of the song. And it's kind of that's going to make the listener subconsciously tap his foot or sway his body. And then once you get them doing that, then they're going to listen to the melodies in the song, the guitar parts or the vocal melodies. And then if they like that, then they're going to actually get into the lyrics. So right. It's like with a primal, subconscious response to the music is that groove and the dynamics of the groove. And a lot of bands don't really pay attention to that as much as they should, because basically that's the foundation for what you're building the house on,
Right. And yeah, moving forward past the time that we were in the band together, and if there's people out there that don't know, Anthony and I did play together in Lynch Mob. I'd probably say about 6 months, maybe, if that long.
A little bit longer than that.
Okay.
With the Mudka tour, that was the Revolution. We promoted that Revolution record that George had a new 7-string coming out, so he took Dokken songs and Lynch Mob songs and dropped them to the key of fucking S and made them all sludgy, and just because he wanted to showcase his new guitar that he had coming out for ESP. And yeah, that was a weird one. I mean, it started out as a George Lynch solo album. And then I went up to A&M Studios one day, which is now called Henson. And my buddy Joe Barisi was working on a record in Studio A. And I went to visit Joe. And Joe was like, oh, you know who's in Studio B? George, your buddy, is in there. And I was like, no way. And he's like, let's go over there. Let's fuck with him. So we walked over there. And I walked into the control room, and I think he was like doing a remake of like, I forgot which song it was that ended up on the record. And he's like, "How long are you in town for?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm in town for a couple weeks." He's like, "You want to play on this?" And I was like, "Yeah, why not?" And he already had drum tracks done, and he had bass done, but the bass wasn't any good. And Robert was supposed to sing on it, and then I played bass on it, and then all of a sudden it becomes a Lynch Mob record. And I was like, wait a second, I still own a third of the fucking Lynch Mob name. If you're going to do a Lynch Mob record, I think I get more money for this than what you're paying me to lay down bass tracks. I thought it was a solo album. And then it turned into the Revolution record. And then we did the tour, and we grabbed you to do the tour because George loved your playing. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to check him out. And we jammed, and it was great. So I was like, yeah, let's plow through this. Let's go forward,
And I appreciate that, dude. Oh, there's something going on in my house. Somebody dropped something. I think they're making dinner in the kitchen. But dude, it was great, man. That was my first tour. And I've only done a couple, and I think a lot of that has to do with where I'm geographically located too. But I mean, that was my first time on a bus.
Yeah.
That was my first time doing a lot of stuff. Oh, my dogs.
With Chopper Dean, rest his soul. I miss that, man.
Oh, man. Dude, I still got his phone number memorized, 718-809-2565.
Yeah, fellow Staten Islander like myself, and I miss him. I miss him. But
dude, well, I brought him out on the Earshot tour as my drum tech. And he ended up being like, he's like you got house moms at strip clubs and stuff like that. He ended up being like the house dad, taking care of everybody on the tour.
Yeah, he's an old road dog.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I used to talk to him all the time. I mean, he would call me to bitch about George because he never got his guitar.
A lot of people bitch about George.
And I know that, you and George have a lot of history going back. I mean, we're going back to the Wicked album, Wicked Sensation, which, I mean, that was kind of like lightning in a bottle, man. That was such a great record from start to finish. No filler, all killer. And
I think it's the best album that George has ever made.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you're not biased because you're on it. No, it's a great record. It sounds great. The way the guitars are layered, the way you and Mick lock in, Oni's vocals are impeccable on that record. I mean, it was just, it's like the sum of four parts made this beautiful cake.
Well, I was a kid when we did that. I was only 22 years old, and I was greener than center field and Yankee Stadium on opening day. And I walked into this situation, and you had Mick and George who were in Dokken, and 5 platinum albums and stadium tours and whatnot, and I was so happy and glazed that I didn't even realize what I was in or what we were doing. And because of the violent, bitter breakup between Dokken, George really wanted to prove that he was like the driving force of Dokken. And he wanted to prove a lot with that record. And we really took our time on it. And, Max Norman and Neil Kernan did an amazing job. And Max carried it across the finish line. And we made a record that, because of the time it was released, it wasn't welcomed as much on the radio or the pop market or MTV or whatever, because Nirvana had come out. But we made this great record. I'm really proud of it. and it stands the test of time. And it's sort of like this underground B movie where it's got all this credibility around it, and people like cite it as, you know, top 5 metal albums that they like, and I'm blown away by that, and I'm so appreciative that it's been accepted so strongly after all these years, and people still love it. You know, like I was 22, I was just happy to be there, and I learned a lot from Mick. I learned tons from Max Norman in the studio, and I grew a lot during that album and that tour. It was priceless education, you know.
Yeah, and the thing with that album is that, at least for me, and I know it's probably for, you know, the majority of the people that listen to it, I can't put on Wicked Sensation, the album, and not go from start to finish. Like, I can't jump in the middle, even though I think Dance of the Dogs is my favorite song on the record. I just love that groove. You know,
yeah,
it's so in
Zeppelin, that's why you're the Zeppelin head.
Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. See, yeah. So I love that groove, but I have to listen to everything leading up to that. You know, when I put that CD on, it's start to finish, no matter what. And funny, being a drummer, I always felt that Street Fighting Man was my least favorite track on the record. And it's a killer song. It's just, I love the groove of everything else. And the wasn't really my thing. I was kind of Tommy Lead out at that point. You know,
yeah, I mean, that one we wrote more towards a live thing, you know, like so that we had this burner to end the set, you know, because everything else we used to call it Moroccan roll, you know. It was this mid-tempo. We never really played fast up until Street Fight Man. And on that record, we had a lot of mid-tempo stuff. And it was all based around the Bo Diddley bounce, you know, that dun, 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 dun. And Mick and I used to get into that Moroccan roll vibe, like get on your camel and ride and bounce and pulse, you know. And that is kind of like runs through the whole album, that Bo Diddley. It's almost like a rock. We called it Moroccan roll, you know.
Right.
It's got that get on your camel and ride kind of vibe. But yeah, no, it's a great record. I'm proud of it after all these years. It's probably the record I'm most proud of that I've done in my career, you know.
Yeah, and like I said, man, when somebody says it's like a top 5 album for them, dude, I don't think they're bullshitting you. I mean, like I said, dude, it's all killer, no filler.
When George is like doing interviews and he goes, "Oh yeah, Wicked's the benchmark, and we're never gonna top that." Like with every Lynch Mob record he releases, he's always like, "We tried, but we're never gonna beat Wicked." It's like, okay, well,
and like I said, I don't think, and I mean, I'll be honest, dude, I haven't listened to a Lynch Mob later released Lynch Mob record after what we did. I couldn't get into it.
Yeah.
I just didn't, nothing against George. I mean, he's kind of the riff guy. The guy writes a million riffs and plays on a million records and releases a million things. You know, I had a hard time sinking my teeth into anything. And like you said, Wicked's the benchmark. So for me, it's like, I want to hear those classic riffs. I want to hear the big choruses. I want to hear what's going on. And I don't. And that's nothing on George, nothing on anybody.
No, but the thing is in George and Oni's eyes, Mick and my input are kind of looked down upon and not really accepted as important. And they've tried, I mean, with the records that the two of them did with other drummers and bass players, they never nailed the vibe. They never nailed the groove, the sex of Lynch Mob, like that pulse. It never existed because of the rhythm section. And, you know, it's like, you know, they think that the guitar player and the singer are all that matters as far as achieving a sound. and it's not the case. It was definitely all four of us, and the proof is in the pudding because everything they made after that didn't come close, you know.
Well, okay, so let's take it through going out on tour for the first time.
Right.
Was that kind of a shock to the system? I mean, you were 22 and you were put in this world of, you know, everybody catering to you and riding a bus and playing these shows where, you know, thousands of people are checking you guys out and you're doing your thing. Was that kind of a shock to the system at that point?
No, I ate it up on a fucking spoon. I loved it. I still
Nice.
love touring, and like I'm happiest on stage in front of people. I never get nervous. Like I feel like when I'm on stage, that's where I belong. That's what I was made to do. And I like I said, I grew up on punk rock and jazz. So when I played with Lynch Mob, I didn't even know who the fuck George Lynch was. Like I didn't care. Like I was listening to Miles Davis and Charlie Parker, and
Right.
the Police are my favorite band in the world, and the Clash. Like I didn't give a shit about Dokken, and like so I was never intimidated by the moment of being with him on stage or anything. It was just part of the job. Like it was a perk. Like, you know what I mean? Like I loved being there. I loved being a part of it, and I felt like I belonged there. Like I practiced in my bedroom from the 5th grade to be that, you know, like it was almost like I feel more comfortable on stage in front of people than I do off, you know?
You know, it's funny for me. I agree with you about being on stage. I'm generally never nervous, and I played in the same band in Vegas for 12 years doing like the lounge thing.
Right.
But we were all request classic rock. So you know, granted you're going to play the same 30 songs every night, but there were other songs that would get requested that we had never played before, and we would learn them on stage real quick and play them. So it was really challenging, you know, with that aspect of it. But I think kind of towards the end, the last couple of years, I really took it for granted because I knew it was going to be there. And I knew, okay, I've got to be at Mandalay Bay on Sunday and Monday night for gigs. I have this corporate gig. Let's show up. Let's do this. And I kind of started to take it for granted just because it was pretty consistent and solid. And then COVID hit and I don't have that anymore. And plus we moved out of Vegas, but I don't have that anymore. And I'd give anything to have it back just because now I appreciate it being away from it, you know?
Oh, I mean, I play with Jake now and we haven't played in 5 years. I'm itching to play. Like I'm like looking at maybe doing a cover band for the first time in my life, just to get my chops back and my execution, you know. I've been focusing on producing and recording other people and shit, but it's like I miss playing so much. So I totally relate what you're saying, you know.
Yeah, it's dude, I haven't had a kit set up for probably 2 years. It just sits in cases in the garage, man. I walk by it, I wave at it and say, you know, hope you're doing well, and off to work I go. You know, it's just kind of, I live in a neighborhood, so I can't set up and, you know, blast the neighbors out. But dude, getting back to, you know, being thrown into that world, you did that tour and you went to Japan, and did you guys end up going to Europe at all on the Wicked tour?
We opened up for Queensryche for like 6 or 8 months or so.
Oh,
and
wow.
Lucidity was like #1 in the world. Empire was out. They did Operation Mindcrime, the entire album with the actors and everything. And we opened up and Wicked was killing it on the charts. Everywhere we went was sold out. And we were in Europe forever with Queensryche, and it was an amazing tour. It was a great bill.
Yeah, it's funny. I wasn't even 21 yet when Wicked came out, and you guys were playing a place in Vegas called Calamity Jane's, kind of like the Mason Jar, kind of a smaller place. And we were still in high school, so we had went and got, we got our driver's licenses and we went to the hobby store, the craft store, and got those little rub off stencils.
Uh-huh.
And we got the same size as the lettering on your driver's license, and we stenciled over it to make it look like we were the 21.
Right.
And you guys were playing that night, man. And I had used it numerous times to get into Calamity Jane's to see other bands. I walk up, the guy's like, looks at it, shines a flashlight on it, goes, nope, takes it. And I didn't get to see you guys that night.
Oh man, I remember that was a hot one. It was hot in there.
Oh yeah, dude. Small place. I think I played there once after that, but yeah, you guys are responsible.
When we were doing arenas, like we toured with Cinderella, and we toured with, we did runs with Warrant, we did runs with obviously Queensryche, like I said, and so we were in arenas, and then when the arena tours would be over, we didn't want to go home. So we would book club shows on our own, or small theaters or good sized clubs. And I love the club shows more. I like it when the crowd's right on top of you and it's hot and it's sweaty and you're sweating your ass off and people are grabbing your leg and pulling your cable. And I like that. I prefer that more than arenas,
Yeah, that's kind of a punk rock thing too.
Yeah.
Where it's just nasty and just sweaty and hot, and what's going to happen next factor comes into play.
Yeah.
So you guys spent all that time touring Wicked, and see, I don't know any of this. I know when we were together, but when you guys spent all that time touring on Wicked, and then you were going in to make the second record, was Oni ever part of the second record, or was he gone and Robert was in?
He was gone. The last show we did was that nationally broadcast show called In Concert. It was on ABC on Friday nights. And we shot it at the Pasadena Theater. And that was Oni's last show. We did 3 songs. And then Oni was out. And then we auditioned singers. And we really liked Robert, and we wanted to see if we could burn his voice out. So we booked 15 shows in 16 days going up and down the West Coast just to see if we could fry his voice live. And the motherfucker got stronger as we went. It was we were trying to kill him and he kept getting better.
Dude, he's a goddamn anomaly. That guy.
Amazing.
And every time I see, I've seen him with Warrant a couple times because he always calls me, hey dude, I'm in Vegas. All right, man, I'll come out, So now that I don't live in Vegas anymore, I've missed him the last 5 so years that I've been up here in Utah. But dude, being on tour with that guy, I mean, man, he's just a laugh a minute, and him and his tuna and salsa and his rocket fuel coffee.
Yeah.
The guy's just amazing, man. And he's just a solid dude.
He was playing one night out here at the York County Fair. I'm in Pennsylvania now. I bought a horse ranch above Gettysburg, and he was playing the York County Fair, and I called him, or he called me, whatever. It was the night before the show, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I'm in the hotel being a rock star. I'm doing laundry." So I'm like, "Well, why don't you pack your laundry up and come to the ranch? I'll come pick you up, and you could do your laundry here. I'll show you the ranch. We could hang out." So we ended up opening a bottle of Blanton's, and we polished off the bottle while he was doing his laundry. And the next day he had to do the York County Fair with Warrant, and he was hungover, and he's in the dressing room on the couch with a cold towel over his head. And Eric and Joey from Warrant are like, "You killed our lead singer. What did you do to our lead singer last night?" And it was a great night. It was a lot of fun. I love him. He's a great guy, solid human being,
Yeah, it's funny when you were getting married. It was
which time?
Yeah, well, when in Vegas, and you were kind enough to invite me, and
Yep.
Mason came down, and it was just piss pouring rain, and he was missing some piece on the bottom of his car, so the air filter kept sucking water into it, and it would cause his car to die.
Oh my God.
So he's like, man, I don't know what to do. My car's stranded down there. I'm like, all right, dude, I'm going to follow you. And then, if the car dies, we'll push it. So it's piss pouring rain, bro. And I'm outside before having dinner at your reception. I'm outside pushing Mason's Honda in the rain, bro.
If that's not a sign, it's raining in Vegas. If that's not a sign to not get married,
right,
there is a sign from God. And I remember that wedding, like right before I walked up. Tyler, my son, was my best man. Right before I walked up to the altar, Ace grabbed me, Frehley. He grabbed me outside the chapel, and he's like, okay, Aunt, I'm going to ask you one question, Poppy. You sure you want to do this, Poppy? You sure you want to get married?
right.
Oh my God. Frehley's telling me not to get married.
Right. And I mean, and it was a great reception. Again, I appreciate you inviting me down. It was a good time. And it's funny. I talked to Mason, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm going to be down in Phoenix. I got a corporate event down there. He's like, dude, come stay at the house. He's like, Denise is not there. I won't be there. I'll tell the neighbor to give you the key. I never did. I mean, even though Mason's a good bro, I just feel weird staying in his house when he's not there. I'll go hang. But last time I was in Phoenix, I called him. I'm like, man, what are you doing? He's like, it's like 8:00. He's like, I'm already in bed.
That's why he still sing, because he takes care of himself.
Oh.
All these singers think that it's like, oh, we got a rock star party out, and we got to get a heroin addiction and party every night at 4 a.m. and bang all these strippers. It's like, that's not the way it is. Your body is your instrument when you're a singer, and you got to take care of it. And that's why fucking Robert still sings amazing after all these years, because he takes care of himself.
Yeah, man. When we were on the road and we were on the East Coast, his bunk was right above the battery compartment for the bus. And the batteries were, remember, the bus smelled like rotten eggs, and it was just chewing up his throat, man. He was having the hardest time, but that fucker still went out and sang, man. He carried around a notepad. Like,
he's a machine every night.
Yeah. And the damn shame with Mason is, I think he should be up there on the Mount Rushmore of singers.
Yeah.
Just because he takes it seriously and doesn't blow his voice out. And like you said, you guys tried to kill his voice, and he only got stronger. The guy knows how to take care of it. He takes it seriously, and he's still out there doing it. He should be up there. Everybody should know, man, when they're talking about like Ian Gillan, and they're talking about Plant, and they're talking about those other guys, Mason should be up there, man. He should, dude. I honestly think that.
But it's like the guys that I like aren't the guys that everybody knows. Like Ray Gillan is probably one of the singers ever, and he never gets props. Man, he's phenomenal. Like, I mean, the guy is like the ultimate front man. He's got an amazing voice, looks incredible. Like, it's more of a popularity contest whenever, like online, when people go, oh, give me your best bass players. It's always the same 5 to 10 guys, and it's always a popularity contest. It's like always the band that's the biggest, that has the most followers on social media. It's like, they should do a musicians poll. Like the best people, the best bands always get overlooked.
Right. I saw a tweet the other day, and it was like the top 50 guitarists.
Right.
And what blew my mind was, obviously Jeff Beck's number one, and I'm not going to dispute that.
No,
the older you get, Beck is just, and Eddie was like number 3. Page was down there. But what really blew my mind is they had Stevie Ray Vaughan at like number 9. And I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. you know, that guy.
I mean, you got to realize the most social media people weren't even born when he was dead already. You know, like,
Right.
I mean, you know, he's phenomenal. Like nobody even knows he played with Bowie. You know, like,
Right.
It's just I don't know. Those things are all popularity contests. Although, you know, you can't argue with a Jeff Beck and you can't argue with an Eddie Van Halen, or, you know, those guys were phenomenal. But you know, there's a lot of guys that get overlooked. Like, I mean, you know, I've had a lucky run of playing with a lot of serious guitar dudes, you know, and like, I mean, Jake, the guy I play with now, is probably the best musician I've ever played with in my life, you know?
Yeah, nobody knows this. I think I told you this back in the day, but I had the privilege of jamming with Jake a couple times. And this is back then when he wasn't doing anything. He was still kind of like hanging super low and nobody really knew what was up with Jake, you know? And to me, he was just sitting there, and when we weren't playing, the one thing he did ask me, he's like, all right, so Eric Singer or Tony Martin, I think, not Tony Martin, the Jeff Martin. He's like, Eric Singer or Jeff Martin? I said, Eric Singer. I said, it's hard for me, you know, that album with Jeff is great. You know, there's some really cool stuff on there, but I mean, that first Badlands album kind of set the mark for Badlands, just like Wicked. I mean, how are you going to compete with the first Badlands record? You can't.
Right.
You know, but again, that was a product.
What was his response?
And he's like, okay. And that's all he said was like,
yeah.
Okay. You know, but we didn't really jam any Badlands or any Ozzy or anything like that. And the guy that put it all together, it was just the three of us, and it was my buddy Peter, and he's a Ozzy impersonator. So he was trying to pull Jake out of the shadows to get him to come up on stage with us every once in a while when we do our Ozzy stuff with a different band I do, and have Jake come up and play a few tunes, just, you know, to try to get people to notice that, hey, dude, Jake's still around. Yeah. You know, and try to build this thing with Jake again to get Jake back out there. And it only lasted a couple of times of getting together. And I just remember Jake was just so kind of quiet, you know, and he'd just be sitting there and he'd be taking pedals apart and kind of, you know, doing his thing. And Pete's just rambling on with all this bullshit. And Jake's just kind of quiet, and Jake's doing his thing, and we play a little bit. And then, you know, after the second time, it never happened again, you know. But I thought Jake was a great guy. And
well, like when I first joined Red Dragon Cartel with Jake, we did a tour where we were auditioning singers live, believe it or not. And after that run, we went, Jake chose to go back to Darren James Smith as our singer. And we ended up starting to write the Patina record. And in the middle of when we were writing the Patina record, he wanted to renegotiate his contract with the record label. So I told him at that time, I was like, you know, it's probably better for your career to call it Jakey Lee and not call it Red Dragon Cartel.
Right.
I go, because Jakey Lee on a marquee is going to get more money from promoters than Red Dragon Cartel, because it's like a two-step process. Like the listener or the purchaser, the buyer, the fan has to know that Red Dragon Cartel is Jakey Lee's band.
Right.
And he was like, he did not want to call it his name. Like he was very much like, he's like, I'm a band guy. I want a band. I want to be in a band. I don't want it to be all about me, you know? And that was like the first inkling I got of him as an artist, of his, how he wants to present himself to the people that want to hear him, you know?
Right. And I think, and I can understand why he probably feels this way. And because I don't think that he wants all the pressure on him.
He doesn't want to be a guitar hero. He wants to be in a great band.
Right, right. And when he was in the Patina record's a great record. I just listened to it the other day.
Thank
And
you.
it's very much a band record, and it's not a guitar hero record.
Oh.
And that's what I like about it. And when you go back, and it reminded me of the Badlands record, because when you go back and listen to the Badlands record, it's a band record. It's not a guitar hero record. You know, same thing with Wicked. When you listen to it, it's not a guitar hero record. And I think when you got guys like that, when you speak of Jimmy Page and guys like that, when Jimmy's writing Led Zeppelin tunes, it's not a guitar hero.
Yeah, like Towns, Age, like all
Right.
those. It's not about a gymnastic guitar record. It's about songs. It's about a vibe. It's about presenting a band with a vibe.
Right, right. And I definitely think Patina does have that vibe. And I love the fact that you guys were able to do it at your ranch, and take your time and just really dive into it. And I did watch the videos where, Jake was talking about playing different guitars and different amps, and, just really, you had time to experiment, and that shows on the record. And then I did want to ask you, when it came to touring with Jake and doing those live shows, I did watch some on YouTube, and it almost seemed like you guys were stretching stuff out and kind of jamming a little bit.
Well, he's like, when we do the live thing, like it's almost against what I believe. I'm always about the show and coming across pro and being tight and the backdrop and like just.
Oh, I remember.
And Jake was more like, no, it's like, he's like, forget the background vocals. We're not doing background vocals on this tour. We're just going to play the songs with a lead singer. And there's no intro music. It's more like an evening with Red Dragon Cartel, an evening with Jakey Lee. And it's very loose. We stop in between the songs. He'll go up to the mic and tell jokes or like talk to people. Very like not pretentious rock show. It's almost like you're spending 2 or 3 hours with Jakey Lee and his band, like it's different for me because I'm always used to being in bands where it's a show and it's the same 15 songs, and the order is the same, and there's the walk-on intro tape, and it's a performance. Like, he likes it a little bit more laid back, a little bit more low key,
Yeah. Did you get it?
The Moth.
Yeah. So watching those videos, I know you guys definitely aren't planned any tracks, which is cool because when we toured, that was kind of the thing. Nobody was, sure. I remember rehearsing, we spent 2 weeks rehearsing before you and I went out. And I remember at one point there was talk of George said, "Hey man, we're going to pull out the regular guitars. We're going to tune everything back up, and we're just going to play it like we used to play it." And I don't remember exactly how that got vetoed or if it ever went any farther than that, because I don't remember rehearsing the tunes the normal way. But I know that we did play along to a DAT tape that I don't know if it had any background vocals on it. I don't think it did, but it was more for tempos.
Yeah.
Just to keep the tempos solid. And
like when we toured on Wicked and when we toured on the second album with Lynch Mob with Robert, we had a keyboard player off stage that had samples and stuff, and he sang one part of the harmonies. But when we toured with Wicked, we had the DAT tape.
Right.
And there was a mono mix on one side and a click track on the other.
Right.
And Mick would get the click. And the only things we had on the DAT tape were like they brought in Dave King from Fastway to sing backgrounds on Wicked. And that dude sings so fucking high. If I could sing high, I'd be a lead singer, you know? So we had vocal that nobody could hit. And we had like whatever keyboards or weird, like in the middle of For a Million Years, where there were keyboard pads, or She's Evil, you know, like when there were keyboards, or when there was a rhythm guitar track that was necessary for the live performance of the song under a solo or whatnot, that would be on there. But that was it. And honestly, to play every night for like 2 years touring on Wicked, every night to a click track, it made me a better player.
Right.
And, like, I remember when we went in to do the second record with Keith Olsen, he had this drummer torture device, and it was called a Russian Dragon. And he would take an output of the snare and an output of the click, and you would input it to this. It was a rack unit. And it would determine when you hit the snare, it would determine towards the click whether you were rushing or dragging. So it was called the Russian Dragon. And Mick and I had come off the road playing to a click every night for 2 years. We were fucking so good and spot on that Keith Olsen actually thought that the Russian Dragon was broken because the light wasn't moving at all, because Mick was dead on the fucking groove. And it helped us with our pocket, like by being locked into that. And if you fucked up, that chorus would come in at a wrong spot, and you'd have like Dave King's background vocal coming in at the wrong spot, you know, and you'd kill the dat, you know, like just stop and just fucking continue the song without it, you know. But it made us better players, you know.
So did you guys end up ever have any of those major screw ups like that live?
No, Mick and I were money live. Like, you could listen to any of those old Lynch Mob tour videos or whatever, board tapes. We never fucked up. Mick and I were money.
Yeah, see, and that's what I mean. I'm a collector of bootlegs and live stuff. I mean, the amount of Zeppelin, I have everything that's out there for Zeppelin that you can imagine. If it's out there, I have it. You know,
I was the Lynch Mob collector, and I had like in-house videos from when we played arenas, and you'd wait for a beer and it would be on the TV set in the arena. Like, I have all those videos. I have board DAT tapes off the fucking board of all the live shows. And then I have, like, we used to set up a video, a Handycam Sony at the board, at the soundboard every night, and videotape the show. And then we'd watch it in the bus that night and critique how we were moving on stage, whether we looked right, which songs felt better. Well, you know, like, we would be our worst enemy critics, you know, and that's how we got better, you know. And we always strive to be better and be a great band, you know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You had mentioned to me that you were kind of the caretaker of the stuff like that, and I remember being at your studio in New York, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, I got a closet full of stuff over there," you know. And it's funny.
I don't want to release it because then George gets his hold of it and he releases it and doesn't pay us, you know. It's like, and he keeps everything for himself, and we don't see shit. He's done that, like rehearsal tapes when we were working on songs end up on one of his records is like an outtake, or like, you know, like it just sucks when you know, whatever. I don't want to sound like a bitchy moany pussy, but
no, that I mean, and that's the thing. When we were on tour together, you know, he had signed on to do this live DVD.
Yeah.
And you remember that it was, I think, the second or third show we played. It was the third show we played.
Yeah.
And I just like, I could go back and listen to it now, but when you watch it, the video is from New York like Poughkeepsie, I think, at the Chance Theater. And the audio, if you remember, we redid all of the audio at Henson, except for Mason's lead vocals. That's how badass Mason is.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I don't remember tracking too much of the bass on that. I don't think that was, but I remember that. I remember the intro tape that I picked for that was the Willy Wonka thing when they're in the boat. And I remember like 7 years later, Marilyn Manson ripped it and used the same one.
Ah, cocksucker. Man, it was for me. When we were on that tour, I was like so unfamiliar to me to be in that situation because I had never done anything. I remember walking on the bus for the first time going, oh my God, what do you mean the bunk is? Yeah, I had no idea, you know, and Dean's telling me, all right, dude, you can't do this on the bus. You can't do this on the bus. You can't do this on the bus. I'm like, okay. You got to hot bag it. You got to do this. If you're out on tour and you know what hot bagging is, then you know what I'm talking about, right? You can't do this. You can't do this. It's all fine and dandy. And we go out and we do this tour. And I remember, like, for me, the biggest deal was, I mean, George is going to do his thing. I wasn't worried about locking in with George because, you know, George is going to do his thing. He's kind of on stage and he kind of goes off into his little world and does his thing. It was more important for me to have you turn around and smile, and because then I knew, all right, we were there. Yeah. You know, and to have Mason turn around and smile, that to me meant, you know, we were there. And one of the oddest things I remember was a lot of times George would just turn around and put his foot up on the drum riser and play facing me. And I'd be looking at him thinking to myself, dude, I'm not paying to watch you play. They are. Turn around, bro. Go do your thing, you know?
Oh, he's notorious. Like, we would joke, he was in search of the sweet spot. Every stage has a sweet spot where it sounds amazing. Right. And, like, he would do fucking shows from behind his amps, like, where the crowd couldn't even see him. He was behind his stacks because that's where it sounded the best. Like, he doesn't care. He was just find his sweet spot and live there, you know?
Right. And it's good that you say that because on YouTube, there's about 35, 40 minutes from the Limelight in New York with Mason. And George is doing a guitar solo, and he's actually back behind Mick's gong.
Yeah, where there was a stained glass thing
up
there because Limelight was an old church.
Right.
And he did it silhouetted in the stained glass. Yeah. And then he came down, and I think we did Mr. Scary off of that.
Right. So touring with Mason compared to touring with Oni, I mean, if you go back and you watch that last night, the ABC in concert, Oni was struggling a little bit on that night, you know, and I didn't really notice until I just watched it the other day.
Yeah, his problem was always like the first song or the second song, he wouldn't really warm up correctly. And I thought that bit him in the ass. It wasn't that he couldn't sing it. It wasn't that he was good. It was great, but I don't think he warmed up correctly. And that led to his demise. That led to George letting him go because, you know, when you're opening up for like Queensryche and Cinderella and bands that their frontman is flawless and pro, you can't be dropping notes, you know?
Right. And I mean, the same thing with Plant. If you go back and listen to all the Plant stuff that's out there, I mean, the guy chain smoked, you know, never warmed up, went on stage, and by the fourth song, he was money. But the first, you know, three songs, you know, and the first song out of the gates, rock and roll. And there were nights where you're like, oh, dear God. Jesus Christ.
The 80s were different than the 70s, you know?
Right. So after the second Lynch Mob record, what went down at that point? I mean, you guys.
Well, he wanted to replace Robert. And I was like, listen, you know, every interview we do, like I always used to do the interviews with George.
Right.
A lot of them were him and me. And the first question the interview would always ask would be, when are you going back to Dokken? And I was like, if you replace Robert and you get another new lead singer on the third Lynch Mob record, it's going to look like the George Lynch side project of when he goes back to Dokken. I go, there's two choices here. Either fix what you don't like with Robert,
right,
and go forward, or fix what you don't like with Oni and get him back, or I'm gone. And like he was talking about trying to steal Ray Gillen from Badlands, and that's never going to happen. Then he was talking about maybe Glenn Hughes. And I was like, Glenn Hughes is like, he's great at what he does, but is that right for Lynch Mob? And he was going through a time at that time with Glenn when he was heavier and he was having problems, you know, with stuff.
right.
And I didn't think that was a good fit. And I was only interested in either keeping Robert or getting Oni back. Those were the only two options I was interested in. And he didn't agree, so I quit. And then he did Smoke This without me.
Right.
Which is my point.
Right. And I remember seeing I think I saw the Smoke This tour at Pinky's. We played, that's where I played with you and Lynch at Pinky's, and they're in Vegas. And I think I saw the Smoke This tour in Vegas, and the entire night George had his back to the crowd.
Yeah,
the entire night.
Looking for the sweet spot.
Looking for the sweet spot. And you know, that was a head scratcher for everybody, which I'm sure the record that we did was a head scratcher. Well, I didn't do the record, but I did the tour. You know, it's a head scratcher for a lot of people as well, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of head scratches when it comes to Lynch.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the biggest head scratcher I had was we did the East Coast run, and I went back to Vegas. You went back to New York, and Dean took all the equipment down to Florida. And I come back to Vegas, and Cynthia and I go on vacation for a couple days, you know, just to get out of town for a little bit. Driving back into town, my phone rings. It's George. I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on? He's like, well, I think the band's done. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, the band's done. He's like, I just don't have faith in Mason. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I said, Mason is about as rock solid as you can get.
Right.
I said, I've never heard Mason hit a bad note, even when his voice was thrashed from the bus.
Yeah.
I said, you're insane.
Well, that wasn't the reason. And
I don't know, but
well, you know what the reason is, and I'm not going to tell you here. I'd be happy to tell you in the privacy of our own conversation.
Right. And I'm not trying to get any dirt out of you, so don't, relax, shoulders come down. So
I'm happy to tell you. I just don't want to vent it here,
No, fair enough. And like I said, I'm not asking you to. I would never ask you to do that, And so it really kind of
pulled the plug too, because we had that little break, and he went on vacation to like Hawaii or something, and then he came back, and he was like, I'm pulling the plug on it. And I was like, really? You're pulling the plug on it? I thought it was going good. Like, why? And I remember then I called him like a couple months after that conversation, and he's like, yeah, I got a bunch of young guys. They're sleeping on my couch. I'm not paying them anything. And we're doing this new record. And that was Smoke This.
Right.
So the Lynch Biscuit record. And like, I'm glad I wasn't part of that. I would have never been part of that,
Right. And yeah, that's kind of, and I think a lot of people are like that in the sense where, you know, it's the bigger piece of the pie, you know, rather than looking at the bigger picture of everything and building something and seeing what could be. That bigger picture of the pie seems a
Well,
little more appealing.
difference between Jake and George. You know, George will do 10 albums in a year. Jake will do one album in 10 years.
Right.
But that one album will be like Patina, where it's like incredible, you know?
Right.
And it's just like Jake never thinks about money. Jake never thinks about what he's going to make, or he only cares about it being great, you know, and like him being proud of it. It's sounding the way that he hears it in his head, you know, and they're complete opposites when it comes to that, you know. Obviously, I mean, George is doing the final ride tour of Lynch Mob. I didn't get a call. Did Oni didn't get a call. Robert didn't get a call. Mick didn't get a call. But he's wrapped up with basically 3 guys who have nothing to do with any of the songs that they play in the set.
Right. And that goes back to the fact of if you, and I mean, I don't know if you even, you know, listen, or like even curiosity gets the best of you and you listen to any of this stuff that he's done in the last 10, 15 years since you and I went out. I mean, I know you listened to the Wicked, like reimagined record.
Oh my God.
You know, I listened to it once. And for me, I'm like, if it's not broke, why fix it?
You want to know the only thing that he's done since the second Lynch Mob record that I liked? And I called him and I said, thank God you finally fucking did something that's above mediocrity. And it was the KXM thing that he did with Doug. And
right.
And that record was great. The songs on that were great. I was proud of that for him. And like, I thought that was the best thing he had done since the second Lynch Mob record.
Yeah, I liked the first In Machine record that he did with Jeff and Robert and Mick. I thought that was the best thing he had done since the first 2 records.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm like, man, the riffs are there. You know, obviously you're sitting here going, all right, Jeff has a big hand in bringing something out of George, you know, of getting more out of George, because I love that record. And, you know, of course, Mason's on it. And Mason's like right up there, you know. But beyond that, with like the Brotherhood record or anything like that, there's just nothing there for me to sink my teeth into. And, you know, there's people that dig it, and God bless George for having the ability to go out there, you know, and do stuff like that. You know, I'm not doing it. You know, I'm sitting here, you know, hanging out, being cool with you. But when it comes, you know, God bless him for putting stuff out like that. But I think, like you brought up the point with Jake, where Jake will put out one record every 10 years and it's fantastic. I almost feel like George might benefit from that too, just stepping back and taking a little bit of time to relax and take 10 or 11 songs, 8 songs, and kind of take them and, you know, craft them to the best they can be, rather than just, you know, throwing as much stuff out as he possibly can, you know?
Well, when Wicked was like the 25th anniversary of it, I think it came out in 1990. So that would be 2015. So I had just, Ace just fired me over a case of beer. And I reached out to everybody. I reached out to Oni. I reached out to Mick. I reached out to Max Norman. And I reached out to George. And I said, for the 25th anniversary of Wicked, why don't we make a follow-up record to Wicked with Max producing it, and original band, and like, let's make a follow-up record with that lineup. Let's do a world tour, go around the world once, and let's call it a day. Let's stick a fork in the Lynch Mob name, but
Right.
let's do it with a new record with the original lineup with Max producing, and let's make a follow-up to that record with that lineup. And everybody wanted to do it. Everybody was on board, except George.
Wow. I mean, you know, he must have some reason why he doesn't want to do it. The only thing that I can think of, and I'm probably way off base here and thinking, but the only thing I can think of is then it becomes, it's not George in complete control of the whole thing.
Well, I kind of think it's because the thing that keyed him off that he didn't want to do it was because I said end it after a world tour.
Oh, right.
And he, over the years, when it started out, Lynch Mob was a 4-way split. Each guy in the band owned 25% of everything, publishing, merch, and everything. And then over the years, people got cut out, and George ended up owning the whole thing by himself. And the name on the marquee is what warrants the cash.
Right.
And he's the only owner. So I don't think he wanted to lose his cash cow and cut us in on the final tour and then not use the name going forward.
Right.
I mean, I would think that would be more of the reasoning, knowing George, than anything else.
Right. And I mean, that makes sense. Like you said, that makes sense, you know, and for what you wanted to do with it and have everybody back on board again, you know, that would have been great. And I have no doubt that it would have turned out awesome and you guys would have put something of quality out, you know, but unfortunately stuff like that doesn't happen all the time. And, you know, it didn't happen.
There's artists that do things because artistically or even like what the fans really want to hear.
Right.
Like, no, every Lynch Mob fan wanted that to happen.
Right. Right.
And there are artists that do it for themselves and they worry about themselves. They worry about their bottom line and they don't really care about anything else.
Right. Right. So I really wish it would have happened.
Me too.
I do. It would have been great to see you guys out there and
did an amazing record. There's no way with the 5 of us, including Max, making a record in a room that record's not going to be incredible.
Right.
Like it would not have been a fucking dud. Like there's no way. The way that we get on each other, the way that we ride each other, the way that we push each other, you know, nobody's a yes man in that camp, and everybody's got opinions and everybody's got input and everybody's got experience, and it would have been incredible, you know?
Right. Yeah. I thought for sure, whether I was going to be involved with it or not, I thought for sure you guys were going to do more stuff back in 03 going into 04. I mean, I didn't really see or experience any bullshit while on tour of anybody fighting with each other or anything like that. I didn't see it, you know, and because I wasn't, you know, I was kind of the odd man out, so to speak.
We weren't fighting then. I mean, we weren't fighting. There wasn't any fighting going on then. The fighting came later.
Right. Right.
But, yeah, no, I was shocked that he pulled the plug on it too, but I know why. And like I said, I'll tell you.
Sure.
Once I tell you the reason, you'll go, oh yeah, you're right.
Right. It'll dawn on me.
Yeah.
You know, but I was like, fuck, dude, my gear's in Florida. And then
all the gear was together in Florida because we were supposed to do more dates.
Right. We were supposed to go out with Ingve or something, I think.
Yeah, and then he came back from vacation in Hawaii. We had a short break and he pulled the plug on it.
Right. And I remember calling Dean And Dean's like, that motherfucker, did the whole thing. And he's like, and so I called George back. I'm like, dude, how are you going to get me my gear? Well, you're going to have to drive to LA to get it. I'm like, you fucking kidding me? Yep. So I drive to LA and I meet Dean in the hotel parking lot somewhere in California. And I'm pulling my stuff off the U-Haul truck. And Dean's like, dude, you want some shirts or something? Do you want a hoodie? Do you want some? So I grabbed some just to cover my gas. I grabbed a couple shirts and a hoodie. And, that was kind of the end of it. And then about 6 months later, I'm laying in bed and it's like 4:30 in the morning and my phone rings and I look down and it's George. So I kind of wiped the sleep out of my eyes and I pick up the phone. I said, hey, George, what's up? He's like, where the fuck are you? I'm like, I'm laying in bed. And he starts cussing me up one side and down the other. You're supposed to be at the airport. I'm like, dude, this is Chaz Stumbo. He's like, this isn't Chaz West? I'm like, no, Chaz Stumbo. He's like, oh shit, dude, how you doing? I'm like, dude, you just woke me up at 4:30 in the morning screaming and yelling at me. You got the wrong Chaz. Oh man, I'm sorry. And I think that was the last time I've ever talked to him, other than he was playing a gig here and he had Vinny Appice on drums and he had Andrew Freeman singing. Yeah. And he had the bass player from Lizzie Borden, I think, or somebody like that playing bass. Uh-huh. And I don't know if you'd ever heard the story, but it was, he got up on stage and he had played like 3 songs. And I don't know what happened, but he just left the stage and went backstage and stripped down to a towel and he was just sweating and something was going on. And they actually called an ambulance for him and took him to the hospital that night. So I don't know exactly what happened after he left the dressing room, but something was going on. I don't know if he was ill. I don't know.
I think I saw him like earlier this year. Like, I think it was like March or something. He played a club around here and I went to see him and he was playing Mr. Scary. And I went up and I walked along the side of the stage and I was trying to get Jimmy D's right. attention. Cause I would filled in for the Bullet Boys for like 2 weeks and with Jimmy, and I was trying to get Jimmy's attention. I love Jimmy. He's trying to say hello to him. And George looked down and saw me and it was like he saw a ghost and he totally train wrecked Mr. Scary and stopped in the middle of the song. And he's trying to announce me to the crowd. And he couldn't even like fucking remember my name or whatnot. And then after the show, I figured, I did play with the dude for God knows how long and make great records. You'd think he'd want to fucking say hi to me after not seeing me for 24 years.
Right.
Maybe have a beer and shoot the shit. He ran right off the stage into the van, back to the hotel, and was ghosting me. And I'm texting him. I'm like, dude, where'd you go? I'm at the bar. Let's have a drink. And he was like totally not answering his texts, like just ghosting me. I was like, what the fuck? Oh my God. At least come and say hi and whatever. Right. Put it aside for a fucking hour and have a few beers. It's stupid.
Right. Nobody, it's, you only get to roll, go around on this big ball of dirt once. So you might as well throw all that bullshit to the side and at least share a beer and laugh, Nobody, you weren't showing up there to cause him any grief.
No, we went to battle together, It's like, I was on his fucking right side for fucking 7 years,
Right.
Like, come on, dude, at least say hi. What the fuck?
And every once in a while I'll hear from somebody, that bumps into him. They're like, oh yeah, dude, I know Chaz Stumbo. And he's like, oh, I love Chaz and Chaz is great and everything. And which is cool. I got to say that I played with the Guitar Hero and you got to play with 3. dude, George and
I
Ace.
thought
We
they
didn't even remember.
3, but yeah.
Right. Well, okay. Well, everybody, knows that Ace and George and, Jake. I mean, as far as Ozzy's guitar players are concerned, Jake has always been my favorite.
Yeah.
I love those 2 records.
I'm a Randy guy, but I love Jake. I like the Diary of a Madman to me is the best album. But I mean, as far as guitar playing goes, I mean, Jake's fucking amazing, and Randy never had a chance to go to prove it where he was going with it. But Jake, like Badlands is incredible. Everything Jake does is incredible. And, it's like he's an amazing guitar player. But Diary of a Madman's my favorite Ozzy record.
Right. Yeah, and I remember my uncle giving me a copy of that when I was a kid, and I don't even think I was playing drums at that point. And then just hearing the intro, that record starts off, you're like, Jesus Christ,
It's the best opening track to an album, Over the Mountain, ever.
Right. So you've got this ranch in Pennsylvania, and you're doing, you're producing bands and you're recording bands and stuff like that. I was going to ask you, from my experience, I moved, and I'm only like an hour and 45 minutes from Vegas, and I haven't been doing any gigs. I think it's kind of like, oh, he lives in Utah, he's not going to come down. And even when I was living in LA, I toured with you guys, and then I got hooked up with the Earshot guys and did that. But once I left LA, that kind of dried up for me. I mean, do you think living in Pennsylvania makes it a little bit, do you think it makes it a little bit harder? Or, geographically?
Well, I mean, I have this studio and people come and stay on the ranch.
Right.
And stay with me and record. And that's worked out really well.
Right.
I mean, the studio's of Scenic Arts. The gear is great. The vibe is great. We do great stuff here. As far as playing and touring, I think I miss out on a lot because I'm not around. Like I'm not in LA or Vegas or whatever it is. Like out of sight, out of mind. Or I miss out a lot because even though I haven't played in 5 years with Jake, people will go, oh, we need a bass player. Oh, what about us? Oh, he's playing with Jake. Even though we're not doing anything, people think you're playing with them. And they don't know you're not touring. They just go, oh, you're playing with Jake. Next, next name on the list.
Right.
So it's like, I think I lose a lot, but I really don't like LA. Like I never felt LA was home, and I don't think I could live there. So I guess it's a trade-off, It's like the right gigs always seem to find me.
Right.
And there's like 90% of the gigs in LA I don't want anyway. So
right. The thing that I didn't like about LA was you couldn't strike up a conversation with anybody.
Yeah, there's a lot about LA.
Right.
I always felt like in LA, I'm a New Yorker. Like I'm raised on that tempo. And I always felt like I was swimming against the tide in LA.
Right. Yeah, I just remember when I was doing the Earshot thing, working on tunes for the record, the band minus Will would go to a bar because when we were doing that, the 4 of us would sit in a room 12, 14 hours a day writing songs, and Will would show up every couple of days to hear what we were doing and, try to work on stuff that way. But we would get done and we would just go to, like the local bar down the street just to have a beer or two. And you'd sit at the bar and you just couldn't strike up a conversation with anybody.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of weird that way. So
Johnny Sprague was my brother-in-law for a minute.
Dude, I love that guy. Johnny and I were tight. Johnny's a good dude, man. He's solid.
I got him in. He was my brother-in-law for a minute, and then I got divorced. He was married to my wife's sister, And then I got divorced and I went out with Ace, and we had never met each other, even though we were brother-in-laws for a minute.
Right.
I was like, dude, I'm going out. Would you ever think about bass teching? You want a bass tech for me? So I took Johnny out as my bass tech just because I liked him and I wanted to hang out, you know, and it's like we hit it off and we're still friends, you know, like we still totally.
Yeah. I still talk to Johnny. We don't talk on the phone all that often, but we're constantly shooting text messages back and forth to each other. And it's a big deal to me. I mean, he's got his 2 girls and I constantly see him doing stuff with his girls. And I text and I'm like, dude, that's rad. Father of the year, bro.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he's rock solid, man. I know with the Will thing, I talk to Will every once in a while. You know, we're good now. We're much better as friends and not bandmates, I think. But, you know, dude, I'm glad that, you know, you and I have remained friends after that whole thing. That means a lot to me. Same with Mason. And, you know, after having Wicked be such a big part of my life when it came out, you know, and then able to play with you guys and, you know, become friends with you guys and still friends with, you know, the 2 of you and Mason after all these years is a big deal to me, man. And, you know, I know I'm just some dude out of Vegas, some drummer that you're like, oh, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
You know, but I appreciate you kind of taking me under your wing and helping me out and, you know, giving me the lowdown and teaching me shit, you know?
I had the same kind of thing happen to me. Like I had like a 6th grade talent show when I was a kid. And we did 4 songs for this talent show. And it was 2 Ramones songs and 2 Kiss songs. And then down the road, I ended up playing those 2 Ramones songs in this band called The Remains with Dee Dee Markey and CJ Ramone. And then fast forward, I played the other 2 Kiss songs with Ace when I was playing with Ace.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's weird how it's like cyclical, you know?
Right. I remember, you know, being in high school and going home, and my parents had this property, and out back there was, we called it the barn, it was a separate building, and we had turned it into our rehearsal space. And I just remember going out there and putting on the headphones, you know, and just playing along to everything, whether, you know, Wicked was good. And you know, then it was, you know, if I could find some Zappa to play along to, like, you know, Live in New York, you know, Titties and Beer. I mean, you know, whatever, dude, I was way into, and I'd just go out there for hours and hours and hours and play. And then to be able, you know, be in LA, and my buddy Rob says, hey man, George Lynch is doing an EP. Do you want to come play on it? I'm like, hell yeah, it's George Lynch, of course. You know, so I go and I do that little EP, the Lynch That Stole Riffness EP. I do that, and then George says, oh man, we got to start a band. We got to do this. Who should we get to sing? And I said, well, I want Jizzy Pearl. But Jizzy was singing with Rat at the time. And I've told Jizzy this story numerous times, but I said, dude, Jizzy Pearl would be awesome. I said, or Doug Pinnick. I said, Doug is just like the man when it comes to vocals, soulful, and just, I mean, you know, you love the KXM record, you know? And so we did that. And then I was doing the Earshot thing and got let go from that when we were doing the demos because they said I didn't play enough like John Bonham.
Oh my God.
I'm like, I'm not John Bonham. You know, he's only one of my favorite drummers, if not my favorite drummer, but I'm not John Bonham. Nobody's John Bonham. Of course I don't play like John Bonham. So then I called what's his name? The manager, Ron. I called Ron Rutledge. I said, hey man, I just got fired from Earshot. So if you know of any gigs, and Ron said, dude, I might have something. Let me call you back. I'll call you tomorrow. I'm like, so then he called, he's like, you want to go on tour with you know, like a 80s, 90s band? I'm like, dude, I'll do anything, man. I just want to play. So he's like, all right, I'll call you back. And he calls me back a couple hours later. You want to go on tour with Lynch Mob? I'm like, hell yeah, of course. You know, and that's when I remember loading my drums in, and you looking at my kit, it was that purple one with the white hardware. And you're like, dude, what is this? You can't take this on tour. I'm like, dude, this is all I've got. Sounds killer though. He's like, yeah, you can't take that. I still have that kit, man. I record with that kit every single time over anything else. It sounds that good. Looks like shit, but it sounds great. You know? So,
Well,
but man, I know, dude, it's going on 9:30 where you're at, and I know you're getting tired, bro. And I gotta say, you know, I love you. I miss you, dude. We should do this more often as far as just
Sounds good.
bullshitting. And dude, appreciate you coming on. I really do.
Thank you
And-
so much for asking me, and it was my pleasure.
Dude, thank you, sir. So again, man, have a good night, dude. You got to get up and feed the horses in the morning and do your thing, you know, run a couple miles. So, all right, man, I love you, dude. I will
Love you
catch you soon. Thanks again, bro. I
Okay,
appreciate you. All right, take care, Ant. Have a
Bye.
good night. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. My good friend, Anthony Esposito. Miss that fucking guy. Such a good dude. So I'm going to play this, just kind of lead us out. This is something that Ant and I were able to do together. I'm going to play this leading out just to close out the show. So check this out.
Every night when you go out walking, every step you take, you're gonna for some more. Cat eyes, pull me down inside, and old jelly lips can't push me away. No, 'cause baby, when we're alone, everything's alright. And baby, right or wrong, let me get some love on my own. All I want you to know, all I need, no
We have the greatest guitar player in the world.
There you go. Ant and I doing with Lynch Mob back in 2003 for the Revolution Live, or Re-Evolution, however you want to say it, live DVD that was filmed. I meant to show these while Anthony was on, but I'll show them to you guys now. So I don't know if you can see this. This was the promo photo for that tour. Here you go. I don't know if you can see how well you can see that. That was taken downtown LA somewhere in like a tunnel going underneath the overpass or something like that. And I remember there was a homeless guy sleeping down on the far end of that tunnel. And one or two of the other pictures that were taken in that whole series during that photo shoot, there was what looked like a ghost or some weird thing, some weird shape in the photo. And I don't necessarily know if it was a ghost or not, but it was real interesting. Unfortunately, I don't have that photo. Maybe Ant does. I'll have to reach out to Robert Mason. I know he had it for sure. Here's the other thing. This was the Lynch Mob East Coast tour itinerary that Dean Merciel, our road manager at the time, put together. And it's pretty cool. He's got it listed in here. It says, as far as band members, it says George Lynch, guitar and inspiration. Robert Mason, vocals and comedy. Anthony Esposito, bass and babe killer. No shit. And then Chaz Stumbo, drums and love. Because I'm always a very positive guy when it comes to shit like that. Here's the little laminate that we did. Mine's seen better days, but I keep all this stuff locked away in a tub. And then this is going to be the kicker. I just sent a picture of this to Anthony. You're not going to see any more. There's one more floating around, but it's 24 inch. This is 22. You're going to see that. That is the Lynch Mob Revolution Tour bass drum head that was on the front of my kick during that tour. So I appreciate all of you guys sticking around. Thanks for showing up. Awesome. Anthony did a great job. I love the guy. Can't say nothing but positive things around him and about him. And I hope that Ant and Jake get some shit going again and get back out on the road. Ant's texting me right now. He says, great drumhead. So again, peace. Make sure you check out Ant. He's got Authentic Arts as his studio he's got out there in Pennsylvania, and he's out there by Gettysburg. I should have asked him if he has got any weird shit going on at that place, any unexplained shit, because I know Gettysburg is pretty haunted. So since I'm into that stuff, I should have asked him that. Next time we'll get into that. I'll text him actually and find out. So again, I appreciate all you guys hanging out. Next week, I've got another good show. I've got the next 3 Sundays, so make sure you check out my page. Go over there so you can get in on that. I've got Earl Gray coming up. He's the state director for the Southern California chapter of MUFON, Mutual UFO Network. He's coming on. I do have Farrah Rose Perry coming on. She is a demonologist. That'll be a lot of fun. I've spoken with her before. She's a blast. So is Earl. Earl's a musician, man. I've got to dig up some of those old pictures of Earl, man. I wish I could dig up some music. I'll have to look. I got to surprise that guy. He's such a good dude. I also have Nancy Timms coming on. She's a lifelong alien contactee, so that'll be fun. So peace, everybody. Again, thank you for showing up. Head on over, like my page so you get notified. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Thanks for watching. You just listened to the Ear Mob Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow.